MOJA Arts Festival, a celebration of African American and Caribbean arts and culture, is celebrating its 40th anniversary next week. Today, I talk one-on-one with the founder of the festival, Dressler Moryl, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Dressler Moryl, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. What an honor and a privilege.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. And it's an honor to have you here, obviously, because we're coming up on a very, very unique time here at Charleston. The MOJA Arts Festival, which is an annual celebration, of course, of African American and Caribbean arts, produced by the City of Charleston's Office of Cultural Affairs.
Right.
Many, many years ago, even before I was born, you actually founded the MOJA Art Festival back then, which was
the Charleston Black Arts Festival. And when we finally got around to correctly naming it the MOJA Arts Festival, and quite a number of people had made that suggestion, but it is a perfect idea. And it's so awesome that you wanted to talk to me today about it, because really and truly, when Spoleto Festival came to town, and that was a long time ago, and it came from Spoleto, Italy, and it was the brainchild of Giancarlo Menonti, and so on, and he wanted to have an American counterpart to the festival that began in Italy. We started the Charleston Black Arts Festivals to, I shouldn't say cover our bases, but to include the African American cultural community, which had been here for 350 years. And so we thought that it was appropriate and a wonderful idea to shine the bright light of the excitement, the whole idea of the culture of many, many people that had come here as slaves. But as they put down their roots here in Charleston, they brought their beautiful, beautiful culture. And it inspired everybody, raised everybody's spirits, taught everybody about the importance of that and of not only remembering it, but valuing it and respecting it.
Yes, absolutely. How did that culture back then inspire you?
Well, of course, I'm from Portland, Oregon. I come from a family that has a lot of different cultures in it. And my oldest sister, Marie, who was a French horn teacher and player, had a family that looked like the rainbow. And so that was something that interested me. I'll tell you, one person who really inspired me to do it was my mother. And she was from New York and Brooklyn, as was my dad. My dad was a French horn professor. But they knew that the beauty of that culture would absolutely be inspirational to everybody in Charleston because of Spoleto Festival and because of the history of the culture of the Lowcountry. And so my dear mother had taught all of us in the family, as did my dad, to respect all the cultures, because all combined, it is the beauty of humankind. And that was so important. And so for the Office of Cultural Affairs to be able to embrace what had been here for 350 years and lift it up for the whole world to see the beauty of that culture, it was amazing. And the people that brought that to the minds and hearts of everybody here inspired everybody to find the light, and they did.
What was that like with the Charleston Black Arts Festival at the time?
It was of interest to, well, of course, the Office of Cultural Affairs was a walking incarnation of that culture and the mixture of that culture with the rest of the community. And everybody understood that it takes everybody's culture to make the beautiful statement that MOJA does, that Piccolo Spoleto did, and in certain ways, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, Spoleto Festival didn't so much focus on that because they were bringing the festival from Italy to the minds and hearts of Charleston, and so technically that wasn't on their radar so much.
Right.
But Piccolo, which brought everybody's culture into the light, made it possible for everybody to be inspired by all of that. And by the way, in the first years of the Black Arts Festivals and also Piccolo Spoleto, we did not charge admission. And so it was available to everyone, whether they could afford the ticket price or not. And I remember we had a lot of programs at First Scots Presbyterian Church because Piccolo couldn't use the established venues that Spoleto did. Mm-hmm. We used local churches and schools and so on. And in so doing, those venues didn't really charge us unless there was some out-of-pocket thing that we had to find money for or whatever. But what it did was it brought everybody, including people that came as visitors to Spoleto Festival, to see the beautiful interior of our churches. And what better place to showcase the lovely arts that both the Black Arts Festival did and Piccolo did it was so appropriate to have it in those sacred spaces that we call church sanctuaries.
Back then, when the Black Arts Festival began, Ellen, and obviously, you were the superintendent of cultural affairs back then, mm-hmm. and then switched over to the...
I like superintendent.
Oh, you do?
I could be in a school.
There you go. Obviously, there were issues with racism and other things like that back then. When the Black Arts Festival came about, how did those venues and how did the people in Charleston actually accept this festival?
With open arms. And there's no question that a lot of people, at first were not sure what they were going to be walking into. Mm-hmm. But it was walking into a sanctuary of a local church to see and hear the beautiful artistic expressions of local arts groups and some from off, like North Carolina and other places. But you see, Piccolo and MOJA showcased at that time groups from the expanded community a little bit, a little bit maybe from North Carolina and so on. But it was mostly Charleston. And the thing about it was it brought the beauty and the acceptance, I guess you would say, of everybody, of those wonderful arts groups. And they weren't all music. We had dance and storytelling for little kids and so on. But it was the artistic expressions of the Lowcountry groups that made everybody understand how it was intended to be shining the light of the beauty of the arts to everybody so that everybody could accept one another and understand how everybody fit into that picture. So African Americans were very important to the overall scope of who was in the light of the people producing. And it brought light and love and acceptance of all cultures to everybody in the audience and everybody on the stage too, and the ministers of those churches, etc. And certainly we had people from our city councils coming all the time. We had Mayor Riley coming very frequently because he understood the importance of all of it in bringing everyone together so that they could see the light of divine providence in every single group.
How did the city of Charleston continue to accept now in the MOJA Arts Festival year after year after year?
Because they saw in the early years the enthusiasm of everybody. They saw in the early years how it brought local arts groups together to work together to understand one another and to bring the beauty of the arts to everybody, and also to do it at an affordable rate. And often in the early years it was totally admission free.
Oh yes, oh yes, and of
So,
course.
and of course, the city of Charleston did put up or create a fund so that we could pay people something and not ask them to do it completely admission free, because you got to be supportive of those arts groups.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was also possible for me and other people like on city council that worked with me to go to local companies and groups to find money to fund it, at least at a minimal level, so that people, the arts groups, were receiving some support in that way. But they also found more support from people that came, including potential funders, to continue funding them into the future. And so everybody was benefited in a variety of ways. But you know, the most important way was that everybody, including the artists, the audiences, the funding groups, or the sponsors, all together would know that they needed to support the arts in the future to make Charleston the vibrant center for the arts that it was regarded as, not just locally or regionally, but really throughout the country. And I have a wonderful article there in the Washington Times showing Mayor Riley and Christopher Reeves, the actor, speaking before a national audience that had to do with the National Endowment for the Arts. And Mayor Riley was talking about how incredibly important it was that both the Piccolo Spoleto and MOJA festivals and Spoleto all together raised the consciousness of the whole nation, with Christopher Reeves right there. And Mayor Riley is showing a brochure about the children's project that we also presented. The point there was that Charleston had become a center for the arts, recognized nationally, but still its basic purpose in this world was to bring people together, including little kids, and teach them about the beauty of the arts and how the arts bring the light of divine providence to everyone and makes everybody love each other, accept each other, and work together.
What is and what was back then the beauty of black arts in Charleston?
The duty?
The beauty.
Oh, the beauty.
Yes, ma'am.
It was often the case that people weren't well schooled or aware of the beauty of African American culture. And African American culture is every bit as important as Italian culture, which is Spoleto, or American culture, which could be a variety of things, but it could be Thomas Jefferson playing the violin, for example, and so on. But it also could be people that came from Africa not wanting to come here 350 years ago, that came and left the indelible mark of the beauty of their culture here in Charleston, South Carolina, both in the minds and spirits of those that came to Charleston to see Spoleto or Piccolo. But MOJA was right here for them to not only understand and accept, but in many ways to teach locals about that culture and to adopt the artistic expressions.
What would those artistic expressions shown throughout MOJA Arts Festival? You know, I was a volunteer and house manager for years. You were the cultural affairs director.
Right.
What were those artistic expressions that stood out with MOJA?
Well, it could be anything from Obo Addy, a longtime
Yes.
friend of mine who was from Ghana,
Right.
Ghana master drummer, and his wife, who was not African American and a dear friend of mine for many years. They were right there to display what they knew to be so incredibly beautiful and desirable. And so the combination of Obo Addy playing his Ghana drums,
Right.
and Susan, who was a wonderful promoter of his art, and as I say, a longtime friend of mine. But what we wanted to do was to mingle or intermingle the visiting artistic expressions with those that actually were indigenous to Charleston, and how they worked together and made for a more beautiful world for people to live in and to understand culture from everywhere.
Mm. This might be a redundant question, Ellen, but how did MOJA become indigenous to the Lowcountry?
Well, MOJA was something that was very, very popular among everybody.
Yes.
And a lot of people thought, wow,
Yeah.
that is every bit as interesting as chamber music
Yes.
from Italy. And wouldn't it be something if we could all work together to present an array of everything?
Mm.
So whether or not it was the Charleston Black Arts Festival, which started in '79, and then there was another one in '81 and another one in '83.
Mm.
So the first three Black Arts Festivals were 1 year apart from,
Yeah.
but then it became obvious to everybody that we needed to name it MOJA, which means one or many,
Yes.
and do it every year and showcase the African American arts community at the same time that we're showcasing other African American groups doing Western European chamber music.
Yeah.
You know, but it all works together, and it shows that the array of different forms or expressions of classical arts can be very, very exciting. And if you put them all together, it makes everybody understand more about the whole world and how culture works throughout the world. And, you know, whether or not it is, I remember taking a chamber music group to Williamsburg, West Virginia, where none other than President Jefferson,
Right.
who played the violin.
That's right.
And somebody said, and how well did Jefferson play the violin? And somebody said, well enough. But I remember going to Williamsburg with a chamber music group from here, and I think it was from MOJA, that we went to Williamsburg and played there. It was very, very interesting. But the whole thing about it is that the culture of different groups of people from throughout the world can bring everyone together so that everybody understands better how it all adds up to divine providence and the light, because that's what the arts do. And the arts also teach everybody to be kind to each other, to have humility, and to understand that the beauty of the arts makes everybody love each other even more. But I just have spent my whole life trying to illustrate that point with different people and the arts groups that I work with to do that, and people that are elected officials who are thrilled with the opportunity to have that kind of activity going on in their domain.
Oh, yes. What is the biggest difference about Black arts and culture from when this festival started to right now?
Oh, well, things change over time, and audiences can invoke their own ideas and interpretations. So it isn't just the person that directs the festival. And that's one neat thing about MOJA
Yes.
and Piccolo,
Yes.
is that the festival has a variety of different people doing different parts of the festival.
That's right.
So that you have one group of leaders expressing their interpretation of this, and then you have other leaders saying, hey, that's interesting. I think I'm going to maybe go over there and study that and come back. And so we have different leaders in the African American community. Lee Pringle comes to mind.
Yes.
Where they have their own interpretations, and they didn't want my interpretation of Black cultural groups. They wanted to run that show, and they were right, because everybody needs to have their own voice in displaying from their point of view things that need to be heard and treasured by local people. But the whole thing that's great about MOJA and also Piccolo is that you've got different leaders of different parts of the festival. You've got dance, you've got chamber music that's sort of European in its basis. But then you have other classical music groups that have never been to Europe and have their own interpretation of it. And the wonderful thing is that it takes on the understanding and the essence of different people's understanding of it, and it teaches the rest of us how to think differently about stuff that we thought we knew everything about. And guess what? It makes for a more perfect world.
What was your interpretation of Black arts and culture before the Charleston Black Arts Festival?
Well, I thought I knew a lot. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I have a number of nieces and nephews that include people of color.
Yes.
And so they taught me a lot and different ways of looking at things. But I would say that what I thought we would do by starting the Black Arts Festivals and have different ways of looking at Western European music, for example. And if you have somebody that was from Africa or whatever, they're going to have a different way of looking at it. Lee Pringle, as I said, is one example. But I'll tell you a great example. We did a special on Denmark, BC. And we did it at Second Presbyterian Church. And the interesting thing about that is that Denmark, BC was the very first African member of Second Presbyterian Church 200 years ago. And he was the very first African American or person of color to be allowed to take communion. And Mayor Riley, at one point, and it was well before we did that Denmark BC special, took me aside and said, I want you to do a project, and I want to create the project around the history of Denmark BC in Charleston. And so he said, I want you to get an artist that can create a sculpture of Denmark BC and put it in Hampton Park. So that was my first introduction to who Denmark BC was. And then years later, when I was going to Second Presbyterian, and it came to my attention that it was the 200th anniversary of Denmark BC, to be in Charleston and to be allowed to take communion at that church 200 years ago. It all kind of came together, and we did a big special on Denmark BC on the occasion of the 200th anniversary of his being in Charleston and taking communion at Second Pres. And Cress Darwin, the wonderful, wonderful minister,
Yes.
present day minister of Second, was very supportive of doing that project. And then another person that was very supportive was none other than Robert Vera from the newspaper.
That's right.
And also the principal of North Charleston High School, and his name was the one who
Henry Darby.
Henry Darby,
That's right.
the one who worked all night at Walmart in order to be able to buy lunches for the kids at his school. So all of that kind of came together in the 200th anniversary of Denmark VC, which brought to light many things about the history of that. And also, when we had the big celebration over a weekend at Second, I'll never forget it. The church was overflowing with people when we did that final concert, and there were people even out on the street, on the porch, all singing the hymns, and it was like heaven had descended on Second Presbyterian Church, and it was a unified audience of great diversity, and including Robert Vera and Henry Darby. And I'll just never forget that. But that was a continuation of what I think MOJA was started for, and to bring to light so many things about the history of Charleston that so many people don't know about.
I remember in the early 90s when, I became a volunteer at a young age.
Yeah, I bet you were young.
Remember that?
Now remember, we share a birthday.
That's right. That's right.
Let's not forget
Get that, yeah.
October 15th.
Oh, I'm turning 40. But
And I was born first.
there you go. But God, you all, speaking of bringing people to Charleston and actually bringing people together and shining a light on things, you all brought some big names. Mays and Frankie Beverly, God bless his soul.
Yeah.
Who else did you bring? Eddie Levert, all sorts of people.
Yeah.
How did that work with arts?
Well, the thing is that it's like when Mayor Riley wanted to nominate me for a Burner Award, and I said, you can't do that. And he said, why not? And I said, it has to be the whole group at the Office of Cultural Affairs, because no one person does it themselves, and no one person knows every detail. And so the wonderful truth that emerges from that is that we all work together to bring the light of divine providence to everybody, and also what that does is it makes people have kindness, empathy, humility, and understand that we all work together and we all need to lift up and support each other.
How do you hope the MOJA Arts Festival will continue to be a light 5-10 years from now?
Well, it takes people like those that we had in the Office of Cultural Affairs, and can I name a name or two?
I know all of them.
Well, I can. Elise Amos Goodwin was one of our excellent members of that staff.
That's right.
Other people like Ray Swaggerty, Laura Amerson Kaufman, and Holly Van Horn, etc. And we all work together. And not every one person knows every detail that everybody else has in their mind, or has some of in their mind. But the whole thing is that it takes the whole group to make it complete. We had the incredible leadership of one of the best mayors ever in the universe, Joe Riley, who enabled us to work together with the group and to make it as complete as we could. And he was absolutely the greatest supporter of that.
My favorite MOJA Arts Festival moment is always the reggae block dance. Of course,
Yeah.
I was a volunteer back there, behind the Customs House, when it was the best back then.
That's right.
It was just the best event ever.
Yeah.
I mean...
And another thing that we did, which was very interesting, was at the Custom House also.
Yeah.
And that was the Arabs, Culture and Civilization. That was in 1982.
Mm.
And the fact that we did that, and we had a number of people that were not supportive and not approving of that, but the fact of the matter was, it was an opportunity to show everyone that it's possible to understand people better through an artistic event.
Mm.
And people that went to the Custom House to that performance that didn't even know each other when they got there and they were all standing around,
That's right.
many groups ended up with new friendships, and they all went home and sought them out for something else later. But the whole thing was, it was the arts that brought everybody together, and it made people, through an artistic event and artistic expressions, understand people's backgrounds,
Mm.
cultural
Mm.
backgrounds.
Yes.
And so, it probably all started in the Lowcountry 350 years ago, when Africans were brought from Africa and they became African Americans. And they have taught us, just like you and I are sitting here talking to one another, we're very good friends, we share a birthday, and we are here talking about ways to give everybody watching this program an idea about how the arts bring people together and make them kind towards one another, and ultimately they all share the light of divine providence.
Yeah. And one last question for you, Ellen. Obviously, I just mentioned to you that my favorite event was the reggae block dance, and of course, the finale we used to have at Hampton Park. But what particular MOJA festival is your favorite that has allowed you to understand a cultural background much better?
All of them.
Mm.
It's hard to separate, but I talked to you about Oboe Addy,
Yes.
and the Ghana master drummer.
Right.
His wife, who's not African American, is one of my best friends. Oboe Addy brought the beauty of Ghana and its culture to all of us, and it is impossible to describe how important that was, and how many, many, many friendships grew out of that.
Yes.
And that's what everybody has to understand, is that the arts bring everyone together. I go to the Charleston Symphony. My background is as a cellist, and I come from a family of classical musicians, most of them French horn players. But I cannot ever go to the Charleston Symphony and sit in this box seat that I have come to love without feeling the incredible satisfaction of being part of that. And I sit right behind the bass section, and I always want to leap over the balcony and turn their pages during the concert. But it is so incredibly unifying, and the conductor of the symphony is Yuri Becker, and he's from, well, I think he's Russian, but he's a wonderful violin player. He's a wonderful, wonderful friend. But we often talk about how every time you go to the concert, you have a new relationship and a new impression that you have met some new people.
Right.
But it's the music that brings everyone together.
Yes.
And of course, the string bass section always smiles at me, saying, "Are you going to turn our pages tonight?" I'm kidding. But there's nothing to describe the fullness and the satisfaction of the huge friendship that you develop with everybody in the room. And that we're talking about the Civic Auditorium in the Gilliard.
Right.
And they have a lot of music that they present that conveys African American culture, Arab culture. Let's see, the conductor of the symphony for a while was named Kenneth Lam. He was from China, and an amazing person, and so on. But it all makes the whole world a better place. And if my saying is, when you go, you have to sit up and pay attention, or you'll miss something important, something that will help you grow and help you be more understanding towards your fellow man and woman.
Well, I want to thank you for obviously introducing us to the Black Arts Festival, now MOJA Arts Festival, which has helped change a lot of us and helped us grow a lot here in the Lowcountry. So thank you.
Oh, well, you are welcome, but you know what? I couldn't have done it without the Office of Cultural Affairs, Mayor Riley, you, and many, many, many people, and all the people of color that are in my family. But we all work together. We all recognize that the arts make us come together, make us kinder towards one another, and make us want to not only save the world, but help everybody with whatever they need.
And thank to all those volunteers for over the years.
Yes. Oh my God. We couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
Could not. And that goes with, the Gilliard and the whole staff there, the city staff,
Sure.
city council,
Right.
the whole structure
Yes.
of local government helps make all this come to pass.
Yes.
But you
Oh.
make people's ability and access to understand. You deserve a bravo and a Nobel Peace Prize for everything you do, Quintin. You're the best.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm doing what God has asked me to do in the name of Jesus. So I just
Yes.
got to keep doing it.
Yes.
Providing a public service to the community.
Yes. God bless you.
Yes, you too. Well, Ellen Dressler Moryl, the founding director of the Charleston Black Arts Festival,
That's
now
right.
MOJA Arts Festival,
Right.
and the City of Charleston's Cultural Affairs Director from
97? No. It was before that. Anyway, I did it for about 40 years.
40 years,
And,
1970s. Yeah.
79.
That's right.
70.
79 to
But this
2015,
actually
I
went
think.
a little bit before that, I think. Anyway,
Mhm.
but the honor and the privilege was mine to have, but the fact that everybody worked together to make the Black Arts Festival flourish
That's right.
and become accessible to everybody and teach everybody about the beauty and the wonder of the arts, and that it makes everybody kinder towards the whole community.
We thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close-Ups.
God bless you.
Likewise.
Quintin.
Thank you.